So the content system that's led to $4.2 million worth of business for my clients has been broken down to 5 stages here. And this is the best way I can lay it out for you, because it covers what we're going to say and what you need to put into your content, the strategy behind it, the split testing of the different formats, how you're going to then schedule that and make it a little bit more easy to follow day to day, so you're not having to come up with new ideas on the day, because that is the worst case scenario for trying to create content, trying to be creative then and there. And then how are you going to go and scale this? What can you do to model what works so you can spend more time and increasing the flow of inquiries into your business, increasing your followers, rather than spending so much time just creating content for content's sake. And this is really important when it comes to increasing your inquiry rate, because if we can get 2 clients signed up per week, and then you can average around 8 months with each client you take on, that's a $10,000 per month business. You'll grow to $10,000, but you'll also maintain it, because those are the 2 key metrics that I have for my clients to get to that initial figure. And then once you typically get to that stage, you can then look at scaling towards sort of 20K plus. But that's the first thing. So 2 clients coming through every single week, hold on to them for 8 months. How are we going to do that? Let's break into it. So what are you going to say? Really, really important, this, because you need to talk about the topics, or talk about the problems more so, of what you know your clients struggle with. Because if you can't solve certain problems, or you're talking about topics that people are not interested in, you're really not going to attract people into your business. And this is where people just post into the void and they don't get inquiries. So there's 2 main points here. The first point is most coaches are just talking about topics, or they're just literally videoing themselves, their workouts in the gym. Boring as hell content, which is going to do nothing to attract people. No one really cares about what you're doing in the gym. No one cares about you, they only care about themselves. So you can show a little bit off about what you've been about, but only in the context of how you've grown and how you're meeting people at their level when you show your journey. And that's more important, because people need to see themselves in you to build that connection, which we're going to go on to. But once they have that connection, it's more about them increasing their believability that they can get the result. So whenever you show stuff about yourself, no one cares about you. That's not what's happening. What's happening is they see an earlier version of you, which they associate with, and then they see where you're at now and they think they can get that result, and it massively spikes the desire and believability in them. And that is probably one of the key factors of people inquiring or not. Will it work for me? If it is a yes, and you can answer that question, you're going to get more inquiries. So that's why you share your own journey. So I wanted to give clarity on that. It's worth spending time on, because you see a lot of people sharing about their stories, talking about their lives. This is why. Where if you're just posting your workouts, and you're literally doing a carousel video clip of what you've done for uppers that day, no one gives a fuck. So move away from that content and move away from topics in general. Because if we can shift from just general topics, which you blend in to every other coach on there, where you don't stand out, you need to focus on the specifics and focus on the problems that you like solving. And again, you can be in a broad general population market, but if you really enjoy solving certain issues, or you have certain methods of how you help people lose fat, home in on that. That's where you need to start focusing on. That's technically niching down, but you can still be incredibly broad and attract loads of people if you have, or if you're very accurate on certain problems. But how the hell do you find that out, John? Well, basically, you map out a 2-year journey for your client. This is called the problem path. Very useful task for you to do. So right now, if you can pick one client they could find 1,000 of, who is that person? What are their names? What does a day in their life look like? Write it all down and then do this task. Because if you can map out where they are day 0 and where they are at year 2, month 24, that's 2 years. Yes, it is. And what happens in between? What are the stages? What are the barriers? What are the hurdles they have to overcome? What are the belief systems they have to change? What do they have to do to go from those 2 timestamps? And then you've got to think about where the pain is in the market. And this is the second thing, which is really important. Shifting away from just general topics to problems, which you kind of find out on this journey. But where is the pain? What are the problems that people generally care about? So if people really don't care about hydration, people talk about you should be hydrated. Obviously, drinking water is important. No one cares. But if you describe how it affects fat loss and the rate of fat loss, and the fact that they're doing all this effort and they're spending a vast amount of willpower and energy to live on a Stairmaster. I did 45 minutes today. Wasn't the most enjoyable way to spend 45 minutes, but I've done all that. But if I find out that I'm sabotaging myself by not hydrating myself, and I'm actually slowing down the rate of fat loss because of X, Y, Z, then I'm going to pay some damn attention to drinking more water. So again, identify where the pain is in the market, and specifically, when you look at the problems here, when you go through this journey, what problems are they thinking about? That's what's important, because if you think, well, that person, hydration, hydration, they're not being hydrated. If they're not thinking really about hydration, they're thinking more about its habits or things like that. Whatever they're thinking about, whatever your clients obsess about early on in the process, and you enjoy solving those problems, that's your answer. So that is worth spending time on, because it determines who you attract with your content and determines the inquiry rate. Because again, if you're talking about problems that no one cares about and there's no pain behind it, you're not going to get inquiries. With all the skill in the world and all the effort put into the editing, if no one cares about it, no one cares about it. So home in on that, and then we can start to take that information and strategize it. So this is the second stage. So this is really important. Again, you need to have content which overlaps, intersects, and has a reason to be there. Each post has to have a purpose. And so many coaches are literally just pissing in the wind, copying other coaches' plans. Oh, I've seen someone do that. I've seen someone do that trend. I've seen someone do that. And then they post it, they spend so much effort replicating it, and they wonder why it doesn't work. They wonder why it doesn't go viral. They wonder why no one inquires off the back of it. And they're constantly looking for other people. What are they doing? What are they doing? What are they doing? And you're not doing anything coherent. You don't have a consistent strategy. You need to have a systemized approach like this. So this is a very, very simple. If you just look at the inside to start off with, talk about the problems that you know your market care about and the problems you enjoy solving. Show your service. Show a framework of how you work. Show how do you turn up and solve that. And then what is your proof that that framework works? What are the client results? And that at its core is simple enough strategy. The problems will attract the people. They'll pull the right people in. The framework gives evidence, and it starts to show people that your service is the solution. They need to sign up in order to solve that issue. And then there's loads of people who've gone through that process. Rinse and repeat over and over and over and over again. That as a flywheel is as basic as it can get, but it's important. And so many people miss out that stage, or so many people miss out that stage, and they're not precise on that, and they show results. A lot of people don't even show enough results. It's just like, so they complement each other. There's a reason why my clients have a specific strategy. It's purely audited and tailored around their market. And again, they tell me this is the person I want to work with. I look into the detail and I go, right, these are the problems. We factor everything into a schedule. We work on a framework. So we show that off, which obviously improves retention to that 8-month minimum target. And then we look at the results. We do a proof audit. We analyze everything. And obviously, if you're stuck with any of this, you can book in a call below. I work one-on-one with everyone. I'll do whatever I can to help you on that call regardless. But sometimes it takes a bit of outside perspective, particularly the fact I've worked with 400 coaches now and I know a lot about the market. It might take a bit of nuance to kind of find out, right, that is what you should focus on, not that, not that, not that. That's a waste of time. That will actually get inquiries. Do that, rinse and repeat, stay on that. So that's the core. And then when you look at what's actually happening on a meta scale, on a bigger scale, talking about the problems, you have to capture attention. And we're going to get onto this with the formats. You have to draw people in. Then you have to connect with them. And when I say connect, the majority of that is them associating with you so they see themselves in you, to make them believe that you have gone through that process and you, and only you, understand them. And that's 90% of the effort. If someone watches your content and they feel like you understand them and you read their reality back to them, that's more important than just showing them the solution. Because deep down, if you show the solution up front, it's going to go straight over their heads. They're not looking for it. But if they feel that resonance and that connection, and you're literally just saying exactly how they feel, behaviors, thoughts, emotions in that moment, when you were back at that point on imagine a carousel and you're showing that off and they're reading that and they're feeling that with you, that is going to pull someone towards you and convince them to go, like, this person gets me, understands me, and they're going to lean in. Next time they see your content, they're going to pay attention. And then that goes on to the convincing stage. So that's typically results once they kind of get that, understand that you get them, and you've been there and you help clients in there. And then you can then convince them, maybe show elements of the framework, maybe show obviously proof of client results. Then they know that it can be done. They know that they can do it. They know that you've done it on other people. And then you just got to convert them. That could be call to action content. That could be story content. That could be polls, quizzes, Q&As, loads of different stuff. But that's what's happening in the background, and those are the stages you need to go through. So if your content strategy doesn't have different angles which cover each of those elements, then it's not set up to work. You have to have different purposes within different pieces of content, and they should work in tandem. And then that's when we get onto the different formats, because another huge mistake I see coaches make the whole entire time is they're obsessive about the vanity metrics. It's very cliche, but likes, views really aren't as important as intent. And intent is the missing ingredient with a lot of content. And if you're not getting inquiries and if you haven't had anyone fill out your type form or fill out that inquiry form in the past like 2 weeks or even past 2 months, it's probably due to the fact that you're not delivering intent in your content. You're not speaking to people, or you're not delivering that hard message to that one person who needs to hear it. So on the bottom, I've got different formats. Obviously you've got trends. This could also be reaction style content, I suppose, but this is where you're literally jumping on the bandwagon of what other people do. Then you could do a picture, very sort of minimal impact. A quote could be a little bit more. That could be also a video. Imagine you're just doing like, training in the gym, bit of B-roll, quote over the top of it. Again, designed for higher views and easier watching, but designed for lower intent. Carousels, probably going to get a bit less views than some of the shorter reels, the shorter format content. But again, you can deliver a bit more of a message on there. Lastly, talking content, probably the worst for views and exposure and engagement, the best for intent. And this is where this is more capture content, maybe connecting, and this side of the graph is more convince and convert. This is where you're speaking to one person. You're looking at the camera, looking down the lens, and you're speaking to that person because you have a message and you have to say it to them. Whereas this is a bit more hitting on the mark, hitting a bit of a lighter hit, a lighter note. But you have to incorporate both elements, and everyone's obsessed about that side of the graph, and then they wonder why they don't get signups. They wonder why no one's coming in, and they hate the idea of having to message people, but that's really the only thing they can do, because their inquiries and their forms are not being filled out weekly. So you have to deliver intent and design some content where it's going to be terrible for views, but one person is going to listen to that, and that's all you need to do. Just try and get one person. If you could think about it like this, one solid reel every single day, speaking to one person, that's 365 leads a year. You need under a quarter, speaking English, John. You need a quarter of that in order to hit your capacity and earn 10K. So, and I've got some data on this, because one of the guys I was working alongside back in the old mentoring company I used to work with, he used to average 6,000 views a reel, and one reel performed terribly. It got like 360 views, but that reel produced 12 grand worth of business because he got 3 upfront payments, 3 clients off that, and they all signed up for a 3+ month package. And it's just like, on paper, when you look at the metrics, it was horrendous in terms of what Instagram said on the insights, but he nailed the messaging. The intent was there. So understand that these different formats can actually suit different parts of the strategy. And it's trying to balance that out in a schedule that looks something like this. And what I've done here is I've strategized this a little bit differently. So if you've got a smaller account, you need more eyeballs on you and you need to grow it, we've got like a traffic style ratio. And then if you've got like, let's just say 4,000 client or 4,000 followers, and you're quite happy and you're content, that's enough to start to push more towards the inquiry type of content, I would say. So just looking at it very loosely, you've got the psychology of the week here, which I'll run through very quickly. Monday, good day, because they got down to about motivation's high. Also psychologically, starting at the beginning of something people like doing. Tuesday's okay, not as good as Monday. Wednesday's okay, not as good as Tuesday. Thursday's casual. Friday's terrible because it's, well, in terms of intent, people are very relaxed, very light messaging. Saturday's the worst day of the week because people don't want to feel guilty about not making a change. They just want to relax. Sunday, really good day because they've had their fun, apprehensive about the week starting again, and they're looking ahead. And then typically you'll find they're cross-comparing themselves if they're just waiting for the week to hit them. Quite a good time to put client results, I would say, on a Sunday. So If you're optimizing more towards that side of the graph because you want to grow and you want to get more eyeballs on you, then you can do a bit of like a trend on a Monday, again, designed to get maximum views. You could do a talking reel on a Tuesday. You could do a carousel on a Wednesday. You could do a quote, again, probably like a short video, short reel, under 10 seconds, quote on the top. That would be good. You could do another trend on a Friday, again, quite light tone, bit more of like a meme. Then you could do another quote, short reel. Then you could do a picture with the client result. And again, if you look at that, in terms of these letters up here, that's basically looking at the framework, that's looking at the problems, that's looking at a client result, that's the client result, that's looking at your framework again, that's referencing problems again. And then if it's a meme, you could like point fun or point at the frustrations of the market. And then I just put that as a casual thing because it's just Saturday. I don't really care about Saturday, to be honest, but do what you want. So that's traffic. And then you've got inquiries on the bottom, just running through this. You've got a talking reel, again, designed for a little bit more intent. You've got a carousel. Then you've got a picture, which again would be probably client, another picture on Sunday. You could do a picture, a casual one on Saturday. And then you're going to do a quote. To be honest, you could do quotes just on pictures, but I like quotes on short reels. And then you could do another talking one on a Thursday. And then these basically, what's happening in the check-ins, what do your clients have frustrations about? Once you train that muscle, you know what to talk about with the talking reels, because again, it's just something that is a real frustration for a lot of people when you go, right, I know that's a big issue and I know people struggle with this. And I know one of my clients, Zoe, is about this. So when I look at the camera, I'm thinking, I'm talking to Zoe right now, bang, and that's it. You're delivering that hard angle, bang, straight to the camera. So that's a way to take this strategy and make it a bit more systemized, so you know you can turn up and you don't have to think, what am I doing today? Do I need to do this? Should I do this? Should I copy? This is all to avoid you copying other people, because when you do that, you're picking strategies randomly. And if you think about it like this, if you go into the gym, would you just would you base each day's workout on what someone else is doing that day? You wouldn't grow and you wouldn't get anywhere because it's completely randomized. Same with the content. So in time, you'll find that you'll start to naturally have a proficiency for one of these or a couple of these formats. And I would say, yeah, choose enjoyment over what's optimal, because at the end of the day, this is a very personal thing. If you can enjoy content creation, and then that's obvious and that shows across, it feels a bit more magnetic. People watching it, if you hate it, people can see your frustration and it's hard to get your words out. When I first started, God, the talking reels, you should see my outtakes. I'll see if I could find it and put something up. But when you're in the mood, you're in the mood, put it that way. When you're not, torture. so lean towards content or formats that you enjoy. For my talking content, I'd actually love meeting up with clients and doing like mini podcast sessions where we just ask each other questions. We can get 40 reels done each in about 40 minutes to an hour. And yeah, it's just a really good way to do it. So, find out, model, try different stuff. Whatever is working, which we're going to get onto, that's when you want to start pick up upon. But yeah, you have different formats which naturally lend towards intent versus higher traffic. And just be aware of a strategy. You can take that and run with it, but at the end, you just got to analyze and see what's actually working in terms of views, but also inquiries, which gets onto this. So when we look at scaling, when we looked at analyze initially, which is this magnifying glass here, which is fantastic drawing, you've got to look at, okay, when did inquiries come through? What did you post 1 or 2 or 3 days before that? And then if you put on your inquiry form, why do you want to work with me specifically? There's typically a little bit of feedback we can get potentially. I saw this reel, or I saw so-and-so's result. So it helps you track attribution. So little things like that, but we want to look at, when did they inquire? What did you post around that? Because that's the most important thing. If you got terrible views, but people inquired off it, like I said with Andy, that's more important content than what did amazingly well. Then you can look at average watch time, because that's the next probably best metric. Obviously, watch time is the main thing that pushes reach, but if you have a high average watch time on a reel, that indicates higher interest, and that indicates the market's probably more caring about that problem or that issue. So those are the 2 key things I recommend looking at when you're analyzing this, and when you're looking back and you're looking, right, what do I need to do? Which one do I need to pick? And what is working? What topics are working? It's based on those 2 metrics. And this is where you can kind of refine the problems, but also look at your editing, because what you'll find is editing is definitely a skill. And the best way to look at it is if you go through and you watch it and you just cut out the fluff, be ruthless as you can. People are used to chopping and changing, but if you can remove stuff, watch it back and it still makes sense, that's probably what you want. If you remove something, you watch it back and you go, no, doesn't really make sense, you put it back in. But that is just a constant process and skill development stage. But again, it helps improve the average watch time, which helps improve your reach, but also it's like value per second. If I'm yeah, and I'm doing that in between every other sentence, you're going to think this guy's a chopper. He's a chode, I can't be asked to watch him, he's not professional. Whereas if you edit out all those and ahs and it's just like bang, 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 and it's just so fluent and quick, it's that high, it's that sense of professionalism and high impact per second. So those are two things you can do to refine once you kind of know where to look. And then lastly, we can look at boosting. So boosting is not the same as paid ads. Boosting is where you just put a bit of money behind a post and it pushes the reach a little bit more artificially. And in order to boost, you've got to hit these 3 points. Firstly, it's got to be in the top 10% performance-wise. So again, when we look at performance, you could look at average watch time. Obviously, have inquiries off the back of that, that would be worth boosting. But it's typically high engagement, high views with the watch time associated with it, if you don't know, if there's no immediate inquiries. And then it has to be specific on the problem. If you had a reel of your dog and that did really well, you don't want to boost that because it's just going to attract people who like dogs and people who don't have the problems that you know you want to solve. So it has to be specific to your avatar, specific to the problems, be one of the top 10% performers, and it has to have a call to action to follow or some form of call to action in. Because if you don't put these in, what you'll find is the conversion of people following you off the back of that reel will be a lot less. So general criteria that you should have, or the reel should have, or the bit of content should have prior to boosting. And once you've got that, I recommend just putting $30 on it for like a 24-hour period and then leaving it. I wouldn't have that rolling, but I would analyze it and see what you get from it. And if the cost per follower is under 50p, that's pretty good. At the time of filming, it's 2025. If you're under 50p a follower for the fitness market, that's really not too bad. 20p is really, really good. I've had that done with a client before. But again, there's no point attracting random followers if they're not your target market. That's probably the worst thing you can do, because if you attract people who aren't your target market and you go, wow, I'm getting followers at 5p a follower, and they're all randomers, the content you post going forwards is not going to be relevant, and the watch time's going to decrease because you've got people who are not engaging with it, who don't care about it. They're going to be part of that initial audience which watches, and if they don't watch up most of it, that's going to lower the average watch time and lower your reach in general. So you just got to be careful with stuff like this, because yes, it's very powerful to scale and like get you high visibility, but I'd rather get mediocre visibility on bang on target and precision market than get amazing visibility but for everyone and broad. So we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot. But I hope that helps. That's a big overview strategy. As I said, you've got to start with what you need to talk about, because this is all pointless if you're talking about stuff that no one cares about. And then you need to work out a strategy with different formats to split test what works for you and schedule it. And then once you've got a bit of a process, you can systemize. And if you're at this stage, or if you're at any of these stages and you have zero clue what to do, as I said, you can book in a call below. We can run through your circumstance and I'll do whatever I can to help you. Because at the end of the day, it's very, very doable. I've got clients who average between five signups per week. If they're doing a very quiet month, like out of season, they do 10 inquiries per week on a high season. And the vast majority, we're trying to get at least 2 signups per week with a good framework in place to hold people on for 8 months, because I know that's a 10k per month business. Anyway, hope that helps. See you next one.